The fluorescent lights in Marco Sterling's office made everything look sickly and pale, including my dreams. I sat across from him, my portfolio of product designs spread across his mahogany desk like cards in a losing poker hand. My name is Jordan Hayes, and I'm 28 years old. For the past 4 years, I'd worked as a junior product designer at Sterling Innovations, a mid-sized tech company that specialized in smart home devices. I wasn't important there. I was invisible, actually. The person who showed up early, stayed late, and got ignored in every meeting. But I had ideas. Good ones. Ideas that could change everything. Marco picked up my sketch for a modular charging station, one that could adapt to any device and learn user patterns to optimize charging times. He studied it for exactly 3 seconds before dropping it back on the desk. "Jordan," he said, leaning back in his leather chair that probably cost more than my car, "this is cute. Really. But we're a serious company. We can't waste resources on fantasy projects from junior designers who don't understand the market." His smile didn't reach his eyes. It never did. I'd spent 6 months developing that charging station concept. 6 months of late nights, of research, of prototypes built in my cramped apartment with equipment I'd bought with my own money. The technology was sound. The market research was solid. I'd even identified 3 manufacturers who could produce it affordably. But Marco Sterling didn't care about any of that. He cared about his own ideas, his own vision, his own ego. "The problem with young designers," he continued, warming to his subject, "is that you think innovation means being different. It doesn't. Innovation means being better at what already works." I wanted to argue. I wanted to explain that every major breakthrough in technology came from someone who thought differently, who challenged what already worked. But I'd learned not to push back. Marco had a way of making your life miserable if you disagreed with him. Suddenly your projects got reassigned. Your name disappeared from presentations. Your ideas ended up implemented by senior designers who got all the credit. So I nodded and gathered my portfolio, swallowing the bitterness that tasted like copper pennies in my mouth. The hallway outside Marco's office stretched endlessly, lined with framed patents and awards that Sterling Innovations had won over the years. Not one of them had my name on it, even though I'd contributed to at least 5 of those projects. That was how things worked here. Junior designers were workhorses, not thoroughbreds. We did the heavy lifting while senior designers took the victory laps. My colleague, Chen Park, caught up with me near the elevator. Chen was 32, a senior designer who'd actually earned his position through talent rather than politics. He was one of the few people at Sterling who treated me like I had a brain. "Let me guess," Chen said, falling into step beside me, "Marco loved your charging station idea so much he's going to steal it and put his own name on it." I managed a weak laugh. Worse. He called it a fantasy project. Said I don't understand the market. Chen shook his head in disgust. We stepped into the elevator together, and he pushed the button for the 3rd floor where our desks were located. "Jordan, you're too good for this place," Chen said quietly, checking to make sure we were alone in the elevator. "You know that, right? Your designs are better than anything the senior team has produced in 2 years." I appreciated his support, but it didn't change reality. I had student loans to pay, rent due next week, and a resume that said junior designer at a company nobody had heard of outside our industry. Leaving Sterling meant starting over, probably at an even smaller firm for even less money. "I can't afford to leave," I told him honestly. The elevator doors opened, and we walked into the open plan office where 20 designers sat in identical cubicles, typing and sketching and slowly dying inside. My cubicle was in the corner, furthest from the windows, where the air conditioning never quite reached in summer and the heat barely made it in winter. I dropped my portfolio on my desk and stared at my computer screen, trying to summon the energy to care about my assigned project, redesigning the user interface for a smart thermostat that nobody would buy anyway. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Marco's dismissive smile, the way he dropped my designs like they were garbage. The modular charging station wasn't garbage. It was brilliant. I knew it was brilliant. The problem was that nobody else would ever see it if I kept it locked away in Sterling Innovations bureaucracy. At 2 in the morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I got out of bed, opened my laptop, and started researching patent attorneys. If Sterling wouldn't develop my idea, I would. On my own. It was risky, maybe even crazy, but I was tired of being invisible. I was tired of watching mediocre ideas get funded while mine collected dust. By dawn, I had a list of 5 patent attorneys who specialized in tech products and offered payment plans. I also had a business plan, rough, but workable. And I had something else: hope. The dangerous kind of hope that makes you do reckless things. The kind that either destroys you or saves you, with nothing in between. The patent attorney I chose was named Rebecca Walsh, a sharp woman in her 50s who worked out of a small office above a coffee shop in downtown. Her rates were more affordable than the big firms, and she had a reputation for being thorough. I met with her during my lunch break, sneaking out of Sterling with my portfolio hidden in a backpack like I was smuggling classified documents. This is good, Rebecca said, studying my designs with the kind of attention Marco had never given them. Really good. The technology is novel, the application is practical, and the market is huge. Why isn't your company developing this? I explained about Marco, about the hierarchy at Sterling, about how junior designers were expected to execute other people's visions rather than develop their own. Rebecca nodded, unsurprised. She'd probably heard similar stories 100 times. Here's what we'll do, she said. We'll file a provisional patent application. It's cheaper than a full patent and gives you 12 months of protection while you figure out your next steps. That will cost about $1,500. $1,500 might as well have been $15,000. My savings account had exactly $842 in it. But Rebecca could see the desperation in my eyes. I can do payment plans, she said gently. $500 now, the rest in 3 installments. I agreed immediately, before I could talk myself out of it. I paid the deposit with a credit card that was already carrying more balance than I was comfortable with. This was insane. This was financial suicide. This was the best decision I'd ever made. Over the next 2 weeks, Rebecca and I worked together to prepare the patent application. I provided detailed technical drawings, specifications, and documentation of how the modular charging station would work. She translated it all into legal language and filed it with the patent office. The day the application went through, I felt like I could breathe properly for the first time in years. This was mine. Nobody could take it from me now. Nobody could dismiss it or steal it or pretend it didn't exist. At Sterling, I became even more invisible than before, which was exactly what I wanted. I showed up, did my assigned work without complaint, and kept my head down. Marco seemed pleased with my newfound docility. He probably thought he'd successfully crushed my spirit, put me back in my place. He had no idea that every evening, I went home and worked on my real project. I built prototypes using a 3D printer I'd bought secondhand. I tested different materials and configurations. I created a website and social media accounts for my product, even though I had nothing to sell yet. Chen noticed the change in me. You seem different, he said one day over coffee in the break room. Calmer, like you know something the rest of us don't. I smiled but didn't explain. I trusted Chen, but I couldn't risk word getting back to Marco. Not yet. Not until I had something solid. Just trying to keep my head down, I told him. Focus on the work. Chen studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. You look more alive than you have in months. 3 months after filing the patent, I had a working prototype that actually functioned exactly as I'd designed it. The modular charging station could accommodate up to 6 devices simultaneously, learn their optimal charging patterns, and adjust power delivery to maximize battery life. It was sleek, compact, and solved a problem that millions of people faced every day, the tangle of chargers and cables that cluttered every surface. I made a video demonstrating the prototype and posted it on YouTube, not expecting much. Maybe a few hundred views from friends and family. Maybe some constructive criticism from the tech community. The video went viral overnight. Within 48 hours, it had 3 million views. My email inbox exploded with messages from people wanting to buy one, from investors wanting to fund production, from tech blogs wanting to interview me. I couldn't believe what was happening. I sat at my desk at Sterling, pretending to work on the thermostat interface while my phone buzzed continuously with notifications. My idea, the one Marco had called a fantasy project, was being validated by millions of people. The messages from investors were particularly interesting. One stood out, Victoria Chen, a venture capitalist who specialized in consumer tech products. She'd built her reputation funding early-stage companies that became household names. Her email was direct and intriguing. Your charging station is exactly the kind of product the market needs. I'd like to discuss funding for manufacturing and distribution. Are you available this week? I took a sick day from Sterling, my first in 4 years, and met Victoria at her office downtown. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with the kind of confident energy that comes from making winning bets repeatedly. I've watched your video about 50 times, she said, gesturing for me to sit. The product is fantastic, but what impressed me more was the presentation. You understand your market. You understand the pain point you're solving. Too many inventors fall in love with their technology and forget about the customer. We talked for 2 hours about manufacturing costs, retail pricing, marketing strategy, and production timelines. Victoria had done her homework. She knew exactly how much it would cost to bring my product to market and exactly how much money we could make. I'm prepared to invest $500,000, Victoria said, sliding a term sheet across her desk. That gives me 30% equity in your company. You retain control, you make all the major decisions, but you have the capital you need to actually build this thing at scale. My hands shook as I picked up the term sheet. $500,000. 30% equity. This was real. This was happening. I need to think about it, I said, even though every fiber of my being was screaming to sign immediately. Victoria smiled approvingly. Good. You should think about it. You should also have a lawyer review it. This is a major decision, and you shouldn't rush it. I took the term sheet to Rebecca Walsh, who reviewed it carefully over the next 3 days. Her verdict was positive. This is a fair deal, she said. Victoria isn't trying to take advantage of you. She's betting on you, and she's giving you terms that will let you build something valuable. I signed the agreement on a Thursday afternoon, in Rebecca's office, with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. I was now the CEO of my own company, Charge Smart Technologies. I didn't quit Sterling immediately. I needed the steady paycheck while we set up manufacturing and distribution for Charge Smart. But I started coming in late and leaving early, using my saved vacation days and sick days, anything to buy time for my real work. Marco noticed, of course. He called me into his office on a Monday morning, his expression hovering between annoyance and satisfaction. He thought he was going to fire me. He thought he was going to put me in my place one final time. Jordan, your performance has been slipping, he said, tapping a pen against his desk. You're distracted. You're not contributing at the level we expect from our team members. I nodded, letting him talk. I'm going to be honest with you, Marco continued. I don't think you're a good fit for Sterling Innovations anymore. Maybe product design isn't your calling. Maybe you should consider a different career path. That was when I allowed myself to smile. Really smile, for the first time in Marco Sterling's presence. Actually, Marco, I agree with you completely. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder, placing it on his desk. Inside was a printed copy of the viral video, a screenshot showing 12 million views and counting, and a copy of the investment term sheet from Victoria Chen. Marco opened the folder, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief to something that might have been rage. What is this? He asked, his voice tight. That's the fantasy project you rejected 6 months ago, I said calmly. The one you said showed I didn't understand the market. The market seems to disagree with your assessment. That video has been viewed by more people than live in most countries. I have a venture capital investment of $500,000. And I have a manufacturing deal that will put Charge Smart charging stations in stores nationwide by next quarter. Marco's face had gone pale, then red, then pale again. He looked at the term sheet like it was written in a foreign language. You can't do this, he said finally. You developed this while working at Sterling. That makes it company property. I'd been waiting for this argument. Rebecca had prepared me for it. Actually, I developed this on my own time, with my own resources, using my own equipment, I said. I never used Sterling's computers, Sterling's software, or Sterling's materials. I have receipts for everything I purchased. I have timestamps on all my files showing they were created outside work hours. And I filed the patent application 3 months ago. It's all perfectly legal. Marco's jaw clenched. You went behind my back. You betrayed this company. No, I said, standing up. I showed you the idea 6 months ago. You rejected it. You called it cute and said it was a fantasy project. You had your chance, Marco. You chose to pass. I pulled a sealed envelope from my bag and placed it next to the folder. That's my resignation letter, effective immediately. I'm giving you 2 weeks' notice as a courtesy, but honestly, we both know you don't want me here anymore. Marco stared at the envelope like it was a bomb. You're making a mistake, he said. Startups fail. You'll be bankrupt in a year. I walked out of Marco's office with my head high, feeling lighter than I had in years. Chen was waiting by my cubicle, having clearly sensed something was happening. I told him everything, keeping my voice low so the other designers wouldn't hear. His face split into the biggest smile I'd ever seen. I knew it, he said, grabbing my shoulders. I knew you were up to something. This is incredible, Jordan. This is exactly what you deserve. Over the next 2 weeks, word spread through Sterling about what had happened. Reactions were mixed. Some designers were inspired, suddenly looking at their own rejected ideas with new eyes. Others were resentful, convinced I'd somehow cheated or gotten lucky. Marco avoided me completely, which was fine. I spent my final days at Sterling cleaning out my cubicle, saying goodbye to the few people I'd miss, and trying not to grin like an idiot every time I thought about what came next. On my last day, I found a note on my desk. It was from Marco, and it was brief: "Good luck. You'll need it." I threw it in the trash without a second thought. Charge Smart's first production run was 5,000 units, manufactured at a facility in Vietnam that Victoria had worked with before. The quality was excellent, the cost was manageable, and the timeline was aggressive: 12 weeks from order to delivery. While we waited for manufacturing, I focused on marketing and distribution. I created partnerships with 3 major electronics retailers who agreed to carry Charge Smart in their stores. I hired a small team: a marketing specialist, a customer service representative, and a logistics coordinator. We worked out of a shared office space downtown, the kind with exposed brick and standing desks and coffee on tap. Every morning, I woke up excited about work for the first time in my life. This was mine. Every decision, every success, every failure would be mine. The responsibility was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The charging stations arrived right on schedule, and I'll never forget the moment I opened the first shipping container. 5,000 boxes, each one containing something I'd imagined, designed, and built. Something that had started as sketches in a notebook and was now a real product that real people would use. We sold out in 6 days. Every single unit, gone. The retailers ordered more immediately, doubling their initial orders. The online orders were even crazier. Our website crashed twice from traffic. I had to hire 2 more customer service people just to handle the volume of inquiries. The reviews started coming in, and they were overwhelmingly positive. People loved the design, loved the functionality, loved how it simplified their lives. Tech blogs wrote glowing reviews. YouTube channels demonstrated it. Instagram influencers posted photos of it on their desks and nightstands. Charge Smart became the must-have tech accessory of the season. Within 3 months, we'd sold 50,000 units. Within 6 months, 200,000. The revenue was staggering. After covering manufacturing costs, distribution fees, marketing expenses, and team salaries, we were still profitable. Very profitable. Victoria was thrilled. "You're exceeding every projection," she told me during one of our monthly check-ins. "At this rate, we'll be looking at a valuation of $10 million by year's end." $10 million. I still couldn't quite process what that meant. The success of Charge Smart attracted attention from bigger fish. 3 different companies approached us about acquisition offers, wanting to buy the company outright and integrate our product into their existing lines. The offers ranged from $15 million to $30 million. Victoria thought we should consider them seriously. "That's life-changing money, Jordan," she said. "You could sell, pay off your investors, and walk away with enough to never work again if you don't want to." But I didn't want to sell. Not to anyone, and especially not to companies that would bury Charge Smart in their bureaucracy and turn it into just another product in an overcrowded catalog. "I want to build this," I told Victoria. "Not just Charge Smart, but a real company. I have other ideas. Better ideas. I want to see how far we can take this." She studied me carefully, then nodded. "Okay, then let's do it right. We'll need to raise a Series A round, get serious funding for growth. Scale up production, expand the team, maybe develop a second product line." That was exactly what I wanted to hear. We spent the next 3 months preparing for the Series A funding round, creating pitch decks and financial projections and meeting with potential investors. The funding round was oversubscribed. We planned to raise $5 million and ended up with offers totaling $12 million. We took $8 million from a consortium of investors who understood consumer tech and had the connections to help us grow even faster. With that capital, I did something I'd been dreaming about for months. I poached 3 designers from Sterling Innovations. Not out of revenge, but because they were genuinely talented people who deserved better than working for Marco Sterling. Chen was the first person I called. "Come work for me," I said during a lunch meeting at the coffee shop near his apartment. "Triple your current salary, equity in the company, and creative control over your projects. No more Marco, no more bureaucracy, no more watching other people take credit for your work." Chen didn't even hesitate. "When do I start?" Within 6 weeks, I'd built a design team of 6 people, all of them hungry and talented and grateful for the opportunity. We started developing Charge Smart 2.0, along with 2 entirely new products: a modular cable management system and a wireless charging pad with smart device recognition. The news of my success reached Sterling Innovations, obviously. How could it not? Charge Smart was everywhere. Tech publications wrote feature stories about me, the junior designer who'd built a multi-million-dollar company after his boss rejected his idea. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Marco Sterling called me exactly once. I was in my office, reviewing prototypes for the cable management system, when my phone rang with a number I'd deleted but still recognized. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Jordan, Marco said, his voice strained with forced friendliness. Congratulations on your success. Really impressive what you've built. Thank you, I said neutrally, waiting for whatever came next. There was a long pause. Listen, I'll be honest. I may have been too quick to dismiss your charging station concept. I was wrong about its market potential. This was as close to an apology as Marco Sterling was capable of. If you're open to it, he continued, I'd love to discuss a partnership between ChargeSmart and Sterling Innovations. We could collaborate on product development, share resources, maybe even explore an acquisition if the terms were right. I let the silence stretch out for a long moment, savoring it. Marco, I appreciate you calling, I finally said, but I'm not interested in a partnership with Sterling. Your company is built on taking credit for other people's work and killing innovation through bureaucracy. That's not how I want to operate. His voice turned cold. You're being short-sighted. Sterling has resources you'll never have as an independent company. Distribution networks, manufacturing relationships, brand recognition. We have all of those things now, I replied calmly. And we built them in less than a year. Without Sterling. Without you. Besides, I added, unable to resist, didn't you tell me that innovation means being better at what already works? Well, what we're doing works better than anything Sterling has produced in years. The market has made that pretty clear. I could practically hear Marco's teeth grinding through the phone. You'll regret this, he said. When your little company hits its first real obstacle, when the market turns, when your investors lose faith, you'll wish you'd taken this opportunity. Maybe, I acknowledged. But I'd rather fail building something I believe in than succeed by compromising with people who never believed in me. I hung up before Marco could respond. That conversation should have felt satisfying, and part of it did. But mostly, I just felt tired. Revenge wasn't as sweet as people claimed. The real satisfaction came from building something meaningful, from proving to myself that my ideas had value, from creating a company where talented people could do their best work without fear of being diminished or exploited. ChargeSmart grew steadily over the next year. We launched ChargeSmart 2.0 with enhanced features and a lower price point. We released the cable management system to strong reviews. The wireless charging pad became our second biggest seller. By the end of our second year in business, ChargeSmart Technologies had annual revenue of $45 million. We'd expanded to 35 employees, opened a proper office with a design lab and testing facility, and established partnerships with retailers in 12 countries. Victoria's initial investment of $500,000 was now worth approximately $6 million. My own equity in the company was valued at $28 million. I was, on paper at least, a millionaire many times over. It was surreal. 2 years ago, I'd been sitting in a cubicle at Sterling Innovations, invisible and underestimated. Now I was running a successful tech company. The tech industry started paying attention. I was invited to speak at conferences about product design and entrepreneurship. Business publications interviewed me about building companies and recognizing opportunities. Universities asked me to guest lecture in their engineering and business programs. I tried to stay grounded through all of it, remembering what it felt like to be dismissed and ignored. When I hired new team members, I looked for people like me, talented, hungry, and underestimated by their previous employers. I gave them the opportunities nobody had given me. One of my favorite moments came during a design conference in San Francisco. I was scheduled to give a keynote speech about innovation and product development. As I walked onto the stage, I noticed someone in the third row, Marco Sterling. He must have registered before knowing I was speaking, and now he was stuck in the audience, forced to listen to the fantasy project guy talk about success. I didn't change my speech. I didn't call him out or make snide remarks. I simply told my story honestly, explaining how rejection had pushed me to bet on myself, how failure to recognize good ideas created opportunities for others, and how building something meaningful required courage and persistence. After the speech, Marco approached me in the conference hallway. He looked older, more tired. Sterling Innovations had been struggling, according to industry gossip. Their product launches were underwhelming, their market share was shrinking, and talented designers kept leaving for more innovative companies. That was a good speech, Marco said stiffly. Very inspiring. Thank you, I replied, genuinely meaning it. Holding grudges was exhausting, and I had better things to do with my energy. Listen, Marco said, lowering his voice, I was wrong about you. I was wrong about your ideas. I let my ego get in the way of recognizing real talent. It was more honest than I expected from him, and I appreciated it. We all make mistakes, I said simply. The question is whether we learn from them. Marco nodded, looking uncomfortable. For what it's worth, you've built something impressive. ChargeSmart is a better company than Sterling ever was. That admission must have cost him. I extended my hand. I appreciate that, Marco. Really. We shook hands, and something shifted. The anger I'd carried for so long finally loosened its grip. I'd proven everything I needed to prove, not to him, but to myself. These days, when I walk through ChargeSmart's office, I see 35 people working on projects they believe in, developing ideas that matter, building products that improve people's lives in small but meaningful ways. We're not changing the world, not really, but we're making it slightly better and slightly more convenient, and that's enough. Sometimes I think about that moment in Marco's office, when he dropped my designs on his desk and called them fantasy projects. I think about how close I came to believing him, to accepting that my ideas weren't good enough. And I think about how many talented people are sitting in cubicles right now, being told their ideas don't matter, their creativity isn't valuable, their work isn't important.